Hi, BJ with Inspect and Check. In this video, I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot if your ice maker is not working. First, I want to just test the water flow because a lot of these ice makers, they need at least a minimum of 20 psi water pressure in order to work. We're going to start with turning the water off. So here at this house, the water shutoff valve to the fridge happens to be underneath the sink. Now, yours could be in a basement, or it could possibly even have a water valve box behind the fridge that you can turn off. So you got to locate the shutoff valve and turn that off. Pull the fridge out and disconnect the water line in the back. Before we do that, it's always best to have your bucket or like a small garbage can and a towel in the area ready to go, because sometimes these valves don't always completely turn off. So we want to be prepared in case if there's still water flowing. Grab a small channel locks, pliers, adjustable wrench to take off the water line here at this nut. This is easy for me because I can reach in here and turn this shutoff valve on and hold the hose over the garbage can or the bucket, whatever you have, by myself. Now, you may need to do this with two people if the valve and the hose are not in the same location. So I'm going to turn on the valve and I'm going to check the water flow coming out of here. I've got the valve all the way open and I've got a good solid stream. So I'm going to turn this off. We don't have an issue with the water pressure, so we're going to go and take a look at the components on the refrigerator next. Hypothetically, we did have a water pressure issue here with the water line. So now it would be taking a look at the valve. Do we have sediment built up in the valve? Or in this case, there's a saddle valve. Sometimes what can happen is if you don't use or create a big enough hole with the saddle valve, what can happen is it just doesn't allow enough volume of water. So what you could do is you could always take the valve off. And a saddle valve is one of these valves that actually has like two screws and it holds it to the pipe. What you can do is you can shut the water down to the house because it's on the cold water, or it should be on the cold water supply of your plumbing underneath the sink or wherever it may be. Shut down the water to the house. Take that valve off. You'll need either a flat blade or Phillips screwdriver to take it apart. And when you have it off, there'll be a small hole in the pipe that it's mounted to. What I recommend doing is taking a 3/16 or maybe even a 1/4 inch drill bit and reaming out that hole, making the hole bigger to allow more volume of water. That's one thing, and then you have to check the valve. Sometimes there's sediment or debris, or there could be even a malfunction with the valve itself where you may just need to replace the valve. Once you do all that, turn on the water pressure and check and see if you got a good solid stream. If you do have a good solid stream, go ahead and hook it back up to the refrigerator. That may have solved your problem and everything may function properly after that. We talked about water pressure. If your situation was that you had low water pressure, go ahead and hook your ice maker water line back up to the fridge and see how things work. Now, it may take some time. You know, once you hook it up and turn the ice maker on, sometimes I've seen up to 24 hours. So this is one of those things that you have to kind of just be patient and see if, increasing the water pressure, resolved the issue. Now, if it didn't, like in this situation, we've got great water pressure, so that's not our issue. 9 out of 10 times what I've seen in the past, usually it's either one of two things. It's either the solenoid valve, which is this valve right here, and it opens. Basically, it lets water in. It opens and lets water in, and then when the ice maker fills up, it turns off. Well, the only way to test this thing is you need like a continuity tester, and that's not a tool that usually people have. That's more of like an electrician, appliance technician's kind of tool. So I've just found it easiest to replace the solenoid valve and the actual ice maker inside your fridge. And the beauty is, now with all these online stores or even Amazon, is what you can do is you can take your refrigerator's model and serial number and just simply order the parts. Now, and if you're not sure where to find your refrigerator's model and serial number, a lot of times they're usually in the inside of the refrigerator part on one side or the other of the wall, or even sometimes I've even seen them on the ceiling here. So, but on this one, you know, the label's right here on the side. And you can just Google refrigerator, LG refrigerator, model number 1234, serial number, solenoid valve, and ice maker. So, but before we do that on this one, I'm going to go ahead and pull apart the freezer and see if anything is unusual going on in there. I took the freezer door off. Now this is going to vary per refrigerator. So on this one and most of them, they're going to be similar. But, you know, typically you can take off, there'll be a rail system of some sorts, you know, and you can pull the drawer out where there's a couple hooks that slide into the rail and then the weight sits down and there might be a screw on each side. Same thing with the drawer. They're similar to, sometimes they just lift out like this one, or sometimes they're actually like cabinet drawers, the soft close, where there's like a little black tab that you can push up on one side and down on the other and then pull the drawers out. I was kind of fiddling around with this thing off camera, and I think with having the freezer door off for a while and getting some warmth in here, now everything is working. I think something just froze up on this one, but we're gonna kind of keep going through this. So some ice makers may have a test button where when you push the test button, like on this one, it's on the bottom here. When you push the test button, it causes it to sequence and go through the motion. So again, this one's not working, so there's water in this tray. But when you hit this button, so you're gonna turn it on, turn your water back on, hit the test button. Goes through the full motion. All right, so right now it's just dumping out water because it hasn't had a chance to freeze, so that's good. So that means that the tray is filling up. And if you can hear that, that's water filling back into the tray. Let's pretend this didn't work when I hit the test button. Order a new ice maker, and this thing is just screwed in, and then I'm sure behind here there's probably a wire harness where it plugs in. They're usually very easy connections to, you know, pull apart and then put back together. In order to get to the solenoid valve, you may have to pull apart a panel. So in this one, there's just a bunch of Phillips head screws holding it in, and what you'll have to do is take off this panel, or your fridge may just have a small panel around the solenoid valve, is shut the water back down, or when you order the parts and they arrive, shut the valve back down, turn the water off, take off this supply line, take off whatever panel there may be, whether it's a large one like this or just a small, sometimes there's just a small little piece of sheet metal kind of holding the solenoid valve in place right in this area, is take that off. And a lot of times these solenoid valves, they're like a press fitting where you just need to push down on the fitting around the hose and it'll release from the fridge. And then you can just, a lot of times this stuff is just, the solenoid valve is actually just screwed and you're just replacing it out. Just, you're taking apart, or I'm sorry, you're taking off the old one and putting the new one on. It's a very simple process. Reconnect the water supply line and then go ahead and turn it on, and you should, when you're in the freezer, you should hear the water filling at some point in the process. So you may have to stick around for a little bit and wait for it, or if you have one of those test buttons after you replace this solenoid valve, is hit the test button, and what that does is it opens up a water valve and allows the water come in. So if you hear water coming into the ice tray, that's a good thing, and hopefully your problem has been corrected at that point. It's a very simple process. I would just make sure that after you reconnect your water lines, before you push the fridge back, turn the water on and just double check and make sure nothing is leaking. That's one thing that I have seen a lot over the years, my time as a home inspector or just doing renovations, is people hooking up the refrigerator, not checking it, leaving, and then the house flooding. So please triple check, make sure nothing is leaking. You may even if you want to keep the refrigerator out for a couple hours just to make sure you don't have a slow drip